Okay, we want to start tonight. I believe there's a representative here from Homedale FC. Is there also a representative from HYA? Chris, and, okay, if you, I'll read this and then we'll have you come up top and take a quick picture if you don't mind. But Homedale FC and HYA both donated money for the purchase of a piece of equipment for parts maintenance called an aerovator. This is an attachment for a tractor which the township owns. The aerovator allows the DPW staff to aerate and seed the fields as needed rather than wait for the contractor. It will help with maintenance of our natural grass fields and use and the heavy use areas on the fields. The cost was $11,873, and the seed was almost $2,000. The total cost was almost $14,000. Homedale FC donated $9,785.72, and HYA chipped in another $4,000 to cover the cost of purchasing these two items. So if I get the representatives to just come up here and a round of applause for the recreational group. Picture of your old time saved. You should have. Okay, you can. Welcome to the other one. It's fine. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. All right. Is Sergeant Martinez in the house? Sergeant, if you don't mind coming forward, please. While Sergeant Martinez is coming forward, I'd like to read a resolution. Whereas Artie was born on April 23rd, 2008, quickly began his training to be a guide dog for the visually impaired, and his trainers immediately recognized Artie was destined for bigger and better things. Whereas on May 28, 2010, K9 Artie, K9 number 8, went home with Sergeant Martinez and immediately captured the hearts of the Martinez family. Whereas K9 Artie began his police explosives detection training as a K9 class of one of the Homedale Police K9 Academy, completed 10 weeks of vigorous training after which he was certified as an explosives detection K9 in September 2010. Whereas K9 Artie served as second explosives detection partner for Sergeant Martinez from September 2010 to February 2011 after K9 partner Buddy retired due to health reasons. K9 Artie immediately advanced to primary K9 partner. And where in his years of service, K9 Artie and Sergeant Martinez responded to countless calls together and proudly served the residents of Homedale Township, Monmouth County, and the entire state of New Jersey. Whereas K9 Artie officially retired in January 2015 and happily spent his days taking long walks at Homedale Park, taking trips to the beach, sounds like a good life to me, and spending time with his beloved family. Whereas on November 25th, 2019, K9 Artie crossed over the Rainbow Bridge and will be missed dearly by his family and his colleagues alike. Now therefore be it resolved by the Mayor and Township Committee of the Township of Homedale that sincere thanks and appreciation be given to K9 Artie for his years of devoted service to the Township of Homedale, the state of New Jersey at large. Be it further resolved that the Mayor and Township Committee of the Township of Homedale and all the residents bid a fond farewell to K9 Artie and extend the deepest sympathies to the Martinez family. We take for granted what those police dogs do, and one of my dearest friends, James Fay from the county, had a dog also pass, and I can tell you it's a dramatic experience for the family, so my best to the whole Martinez family. Consent agenda.
Mr. Mayor, before we begin, before we get to the consent agenda, I just have to take care of some legal housekeeping. I need to make a motion that we direct our township attorney to file a motion to dismiss the lawsuit filed by Mayor Hines against the township.
I won't.
I'll second the motion.
Roll call.
Mr. Bontempo?
Yes.
Mr. Catali?
Yes.
Mr. Nicholas?
Yes.
Dr. Pascucci?
Yes.
Mayor Hines? Oh, just recuse.
Senator Janet.
I'll make a motion that we move the consent.
Second it.
Mr.
Roll
Bon-
call.
Mr. Bontempo?
So we're doing a whole consent, correct?
Yes, it would be resolutions 2019-348 to 2019-382.
Yes.
Mr. Catali?
Yes.
Mr. Nicholas?
Yes.
Dr. Pascucci?
Yes.
Mayor Hines?
Yes. Line item number 9, New Jersey Natural Gas. I think I'm just going to go straight to a vote.
Make a motion.
I want to make a motion to
Public
vote on this.
comment.
Oh. Hold tight. I'm going to make a motion to vote.
Second.
Roll call.
Mr. Bontempo?
I oppose the regulator station as I have for a while. I am a no.
Mr. Catali?
No.
Mr. Nicholas?
So in 2010, when I was first appointed to the Environmental Commission, one of our first orders of business was to review the application for the solar farm on Holmdel Road. At the time, the advisory board reviewed the application, and we wrote a letter to the governing body and the zoning board that we do not advise of the solar farm due to the fact that solar panels are composed of arsenic, pose a fire hazard, and jeopardize the Category 1 stream along the property in that feeds into the Swimming River Reservoir. The Holmdel residents who were on the HEC also believed that this would open doors to additional utility companies requesting variances to embolden their profit-driven agenda by increasing facilities and planning for future developments in the Bayshore area, hence driving up demand. At our last executive session, we were advised by legal representatives in this matter that we had no chance of defeating this proposed regulator station for moving forward. I disagree. When this project was first before our zoning board, through testimony, the true intentions of the regulator station were disclosed, and that is to prepare infrastructure for proposed future development in the northern Bayshore area. Currently, there's a regulator station at the Vonage property. I believe we should work with the owners of that property to keep it where it is. Most importantly, I believe this proposed regulator station poses a safety hazard for the residents in the area. It is important to note that the proposed site has been the scene of numerous serious accidents and motor vehicle accidents. It violates Holmdel's master plan by violating and disagreeing with the bucolic look of the nature of that area, and it imposes unnecessary environmental hazards to our town. Lastly, this regulator station will seriously affect property values in the area. I vote no.
Dr. Pascucci?
I'm a simple guy. No.
Mayor Hines?
Let's take it to the merits. We'll fight. So the answer is no. Motion fails. I realize a number of the people might have come here for that reason, so I'm just going to give 10 seconds if anybody who wants to shift around or take off. I know we all got a lot of emails today. If that was the primary reason and anybody wants to leave, feel free. Great. We're going next to the healthcare ordinance, the healthcare not called. 2019.
Ordinance 2019-31, an ordinance amending Chapter 30, Development Regulations. Oh, no, I'm sorry, 30.
30.
30. An ordinance restricting elected officials of the Township of Holmdel from receiving health insurance and similar benefits.
Move.
Public hearing.
Public hearing. See no public comments. Roll call.
Motion.
Second.
Roll call.
Mr. Bontempo?
Yes.
Mr. Critelli?
Yes.
Mr. Nicholas?
Yes.
Dr. Pascucci?
Yes.
Mayor Hunt?
Yes. Now go to call.
Okay, so now,
Oh, yeah. You know what? Before we read the COA, why don't I introduce Andy Bear? Andy Bear, why don't you give us a little overview of where COA stands?
Thank you, Mayor. You have on your agenda tonight a number of,
There's like a button under your
Oh,
that
I'm
you
sorry.
can underneath it actually. Slide it, yeah, there you go.
thank you. You have on your agenda tonight a number of action items that are related to where we are in the litigation before the court and Fair Share Housing Center. The first item is a resolution approving an amendment to the settlement agreement with Fair Share Housing Center. And this came about because the township had approved the settlement agreement in January of 2018, which included a site known as the North Beer Street site. The court held a fairness hearing, approved the settlement agreement, including the inclusion of the North Beer Street site in your affordable housing plan. After that approval was given by the court, that developer advised the township that it would not and could not stand by its proposal in terms of the project. So that forced the township to look to another source to meet its affordable housing obligation. And in the settlement agreement with Fair Share is a project known as the Route 35 project. And so that is which would include 139 market rate and 31 affordable units. So it's substituting the affordable units from North Beers to this site. So that's the gist of the settlement agreement. Then you have a developer's agreement with Paradigm Development, which is the developer of the North Beer Street site. To avoid a situation that we had with North Beers, we wanted to lock in the developer's commitment to do the project. This was all done at the suggestion and behest of the court, so you'll have a developer's agreement with them. You also have a developer's agreement on your agenda for what's known as the Middle Road site. That's the site where the township is acquiring the property on Middle Road for a 100% affordable housing project. And this developer, who is Homedale Family Apartments LLC, but it's a LLC group that's related to the Walters Group that has done a large number of affordable housing projects throughout the state. This sets forth the framework by which that project will go forward. So those are the resolutions. And then you have the two zoning ordinances where there'll be public hearings. One is related to the Palmer Avenue site, and the other is related to the Route 35 site. And if these action items, so in terms of, those are the resolutions, then you have those two ordinances. So those are all the items. We're under very tight time constraints from the court. If the township doesn't approve the Palmer Avenue ordinance, we'll hear more about this in the public hearing. There are serious potential legal consequences to the townships, including potentially losing your immunity from builder's remedy litigation. And then, of course, I can answer any questions you have as well.
Yes, are you talking about?
Okay, hold on, ma'am, hold on. So, I think what we're going to do first is we're going to introduce the COA portion, and we'll do public comment on that.
The resolutions?
The COA,
You want to do the orders first?
I want to do the COA portion first.
That's the resolution.
The resolution.
Mike, the COA portion's the resolution.
Yes, okay.
So let's do the COA.
Okay, you want to do one at a time?
Can I do them all together?
Yeah.
Do them all together.
Okay, so this would be voting on the COA resolutions 2019-384, the resolution approving the amendment to the first amended settlement agreement. Resolution 2019-385, which is approving Paradigm Developers Agreement. And Resolution 2019-386, which is approving Homedale Family Apartments LLC Developers Agreement.
Motion.
Move. Second.
Roll call.
Mr. Bontempo?
Everything.
So in making a motion, I've been adamantly opposed to some of the COA that we've been trying to do. And as you heard from the attorney tonight, we are in a situation right now where either we act or the judge is going to act, and it may not be a favorable decision, correct, Andy?
Absolutely, Greg.
Yeah, so, you know, I thought long and hard about this, and, you know, I understand that I think we understand up here that the decision that's made, right, you know, changes not only you know, our town slightly, but also can have an impact on our school system as well. So what I like to do is I like to instruct the administrator, if you could reach out to the two different builders, owners, the Route 35 and the Palmer, to find out what the profit is that they're going to be generating from each of their units. And then we could discuss with that going forward as we go through the process, if we can use some COA funds to buy down some of the units to reduce the density, so that the builder is made whole and the town has the lowest amount of possible units we can get. And at the minimum, it's a discussion point that the five of us up here can have and decide if it makes sense, and 4 or 5 of us, depending on who's up here, if we can take this approach to lower density. So with that, I am a yes for the COA.
Mr. Critelli?
Yeah, so for the last several years, I've had to recuse myself from all affordable housing conversations, so I will continue to recuse myself.
Mr. Nicholas?
Yes.
Dr. Pascucci?
Yes.
Mayor Hines?
Yeah, so the COA is, of all the things that we come up here, it's got to be one of the most difficult pieces that we have to discuss and work through. I certainly think that the entire state has its challenges, and it's got a lot of flaws in the system. There's no follow-through, there's no follow-up, there's no inspection. So I'm not a fan of the COA. I guess even more disappointing is how we flip-flopped on this one for so long. I think we had a good plan, it was reversed. We spent a ton of money changing this, the professionals and the amount of money we spent to have a 4-story building on 35. So I'm going to abstain from this. Thank you. That's it?
Back to the ordinance.
Back to the ordinance.
Okay, ordinance 2019-31, an ordinance amending Chapter 30, Development Regulations of the Code of the Township of Holmdel by rezoning Block 59, Lots 6 and 7 from the Transitional Mixed Highway-Oriented TMHO Zone and the Route 35 Overlay Zone to the Affordable Housing Mixed-Use AM-HU to allow for mixed-use residential market rate and affordable housing units.
Public hearing. Please,
If this is Middle Road.
hold on. Come on up. Yeah.
No, this is the
Route 35.
Route 35.
Oh, Route 35?
This is Route 35.
Route 35.
What about Middle Road?
That'll be next.
That'll be next.
Well, no, Palmer Avenue is
I'm
next.
sorry.
Rob, come on up. Rob.
Palmer Avenue is next. Route 35, there's no rezoning ordinance for Middle Road tonight. There was a developer's agreement, but no rezoning ordinance.
Go ahead.
Good evening, Ralph Blumenthal, 41 Stony Brook. I appreciate some of the comments that have been made about the difficulty of this. We clearly have a constitutional and a moral obligation to try to do something. The numbers make it difficult, and hence I sort of understand why what happened just a few moments ago on the resolution. With regard to the zoning ordinance, some specific questions and comments on it. First of all, there's 170 units proposed here on Route 35, which is an enormous number. With perhaps some of what Greg, you suggested, maybe that can be decreased. The previous plan, instead of having 170, had 97. So this is a significant increase. Referring to the ordinance itself, in section C, it says one lot may contain more than one permitted use and more than one principal building, with each building containing the maximum of one permitted use. And that language is there because of the allowed mix of a commercial and residential in this, on the single lot. It's followed by a sentence, that I'm not sure it's a sentence.
Where are you
It
reading?
says, item 1, living space permitted in attic space of residential units. What does that mean? I've never heard of allowing living space in the attic in Homedale.
Yeah, the planner's not here tonight. I had that same question for her. I don't remember the answer I got specifically, Ralph, for that, but it's how Homedale classifies like a loft area, and allowing the loft to be used as living space is the, which I was told by Jennifer, was standard, and we've done that before, so this is not the first time, but I think it has to be stipulated based on some of our building requirements.
There's no period at the end of this line, so I suspect it's maybe half a sentence and there's information missing.
Okay.
But in any case, that ought to get clarified.
Okay.
I could tell you that, as Greg pointed out, that was a discussion with the developer about the use of a loft space for sure, as I recollect.
Yeah.
It's not a bedroom, doesn't count as a bedroom, but I think they could have livable space.
Yeah.
Then continue to the next page, maximum track
Ralph,
density.
can you speak up? Nobody can hear you.
Maximum track space, a density of 15 units per acre. Are there any developments in Homedale with that high a density?
No.
So what the highest I'm aware of is, I think, 9. So this is a significantly different type of development than anything we've had before in Homedale. Going down, this allows a maximum building length of 450 feet. That's 1.5 football fields for a residential building. To me, that sounds ridiculous. There was discussion on a prior application of 300 feet being unacceptable. 450 feet in one building? I'm at a minimum uncomfortable with that. In this ordinance, and the next one, there are exceptions made to the resource management rules of the Homedale zoning ordinances. In other words, the resource management regs are, you might call the environmental regs. That's what they're also known as. Accepting a development from half of the resource management regs, the environmental regs, to me is unacceptable. Any development in Homedale should satisfy all of those regs. Accepting from a tree replacement requirement, from steep slope requirements. Another one it's accepted from energy saving requirements. These days, to do things like that is inappropriate. Eliminating buffer requirements and the like. As I said at the beginning, I believe we do have affordable housing obligations, but they should be met, to my mind, in ways that are a little safer and more consistent with the rest of the community.
Thank you, Rob. I think so. Just test the mic for me. Make sure it's working. Thank you. It's good enough.
Pradeep Janji, 38 Takalusa. So to Ralph's point, and also to Greg's point, the jump in units is 73 units. I have done this math before. It's all easy to do in your mind. It's 53 times about 15,000 per school-going kid. It's about $1.1 million per year. Now, some will argue there's less than a kid, and Harvard studies say 0.6. So you multiply by 0.6. So you get 600,000 roughly. And to get an annuity value to that, you divide it by roughly the treasury plus some spread, so say 4%.
Little louder for Dean.
I don't think it matters.
What it comes to is about $15 million. I
AJ,
just
you
want to have
lost
a rough
it.
idea.
I get it, but somewhere between treasury, you lost half the crowd, so
Right,
let's...
so my point is, you know, get comfortable with the fact that you can defend that is going to cost the town, just not from congestion and all the other issues, just from a monetary standpoint, is going to cost the town $15 million. So to Greg's point, I think it's a great point. We need to somehow buy this down, the guy's got us between a rock and a hard place, right? You need to negotiate back as strongly as possible.
So along those lines, Andy, do you mind just giving, just for the benefit, because everybody might not understand what Greg was referring to, can you just give a little bit of what that means? What kind of money that we could have and how that works?
So, yeah, I think what the idea is to use trust fund money to buy down the number.
How does the trust fund money get there, Andy?
That's developer money.
Correct, so every time there's a development, or you build even one house in Homedale, you pay a fee,
Pay a
correct?
development fee by state law, 1.5% of the assessed value on residential and 2% on commercial.
Right, so then that money goes into a trust fund.
And it can only be used by state law for affordable housing purposes.
Correct.
And so the idea is to buy down the units that were that you're considering approving to limit density, and just so that's the idea.
And again, just to keep it simple, if I needed to build 10 affordable homes,
Yep.
a builder says, okay, if you're gonna give me 10, I need to build 40 market rates, because I don't make any money on the 10. So I gotta build 40. So the concept is, we would take some of that money, instead of building 40, we might build 20. But then you take those 20, the profitability on those 20 homes, and we have to pay that out of pocket, out of our trust fund. Is there any issues with that, Andy?
Well, it's certainly a what I'll call a pilot program, but something that we've been talking about. We would need court approval, as well as the court master and court approval to go down that route. But that's clearly, we've talked about it before, and it's something that we'll have to work on next year. But yeah, it's
So for the benefit again of the crowd,
yep.
we would take some form of a proposal, we would need to get that approved by the court,
Correct.
by Fair Housing, and then present it to the developer and see if they're in agreement based on their profitability.
Correct. Fair Share only cares about the affordable units. They don't care about they only care about the market rate units to the extent they make sure that the project is feasible from a financial perspective, but they don't care about the number of affordable. The only other comment I want to make is that we've been comparing, there's been the two comments have compared this to the North Beer Street site where we had a total of 97 units, and that's the project where the developer ultimately walked away because they didn't have, it was like 66 market, 31 affordable plus commercial. The developer ultimately walked away saying there was not enough, there weren't enough market rate units to justify the affordable.
Okay, so based on Greg's statement, that I fully endorse, not that it matters, but we are going to hopefully negotiate to bring down the total number of units, because to your point, if it's too many students, it could, we would sit here and argue with the math, but let's just say it could trigger too many students, which could trigger an avalanche of other issues.
Perfect.
Okay?
And also just a little color on that. I think it's far cheaper for the town to buy down than for the town to incur the student costs.
We agree. Just no more pie connotations or treasury minus or LIBOR, okay? Super. Anybody else? Michael Sokol, come on down. Are you going to be in character or just yourself as Mike Sokol?
I am who
Because
I
we're good either way, Mike. If you want to play someone else, you have the right to do that.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate that. Mike Sokol, 6 Wildhedge Lane. Very simple question. Is there precedent for doing what you guys are suggesting?
Sure.
That is to.
Yes, sure.
So what has happened? Could you just, I think for the folks here in the audience, it would be helpful to hear how this has worked with other towns. The idea of buying back.
Mike, it's very, very popular. It's very prevalent. It happens almost in every town. It's all part of the negotiation. I mean, listen, we don't have to, there are other issues. If you have rental issues, sometimes they need a certain amount of units in order to make the scalability work. So it's not as simple as it may seem, and you can imagine that developers, right, don't always want to disclose, I make $183,000 per unit, suddenly they make $250,000 per unit. So that's up to who's ever negotiating to make sure that that's where the rubber hits the road. So Jen Beam and Andy, I think, have done a wonderful job, and if they're put to that task, I think that they can certainly help reduce it. But make no mistake about it, again, simple math, we don't have $10 million in our trust. So let's just say it's $2 million. You know, that might be 150,000 a unit. You might be able to reduce it 8 or 12 units. That's not going to change your population grid for the students. So I don't want anyone to be misled.
Yeah, no,
we can certainly, go from 200 units to 80 units.
No, I understand
it's,
that.
It's a challenge.
I think part of the challenge too for many folks here is the aesthetics. In other words, what are we getting as part of the affordable housing? Is the aesthetics of the affordable housing going to be such that we have some control over it? I've seen affordable housing units put in.
Louder, Mike.
Yeah, I guess this microphone doesn't really work very well. Oh, okay. All right, I'll talk straight into it, I guess. No, I think a lot of us are interested also in the aesthetics. I mean, for example, my parents live in Needham, Massachusetts. They have the same sort of laws in Massachusetts as here in New Jersey. The affordable housing project that they put in that town, it looks like it's Epcot Center condensed into a 2-acre lot. It's ugly. And I'm just curious if we have any control over that as well, the aesthetics of these affordable housing units.
Again, I will tell you that I myself, as and many of the other members, have sat through different presentations. It's not meant to be ugly. It's not meant to stick out. There are a number of low-income housing. Now, I think the big question that people get confused on, these are not Section 8 housing. If you have a question on what low-income housing means, I suggest you Google and you look online. You can make upwards in this state of $90,000 if you have a family of 3, especially if it's a single parent qualified or more. So there's a lot. It's not Section 8 housing. It's low-income housing. It's a state obligation. There's tremendous risk. It's an awful challenge. So
Thank you.
Thank you. Barbara.
Barbara Singer, 5 Deerfield Road. I agree with everything Ralph said on this project with respect to the buffers and things that are being changed that shouldn't be. This topic of buying down was discussed between residents and the planning board at the last planning board meeting. So since then, have any discussions occurred with the developers about buying down?
No.
Okay, and we did have a number that night as to how much was in our fund for this.
About 3 million.
2.8? 2 times?
Just so everybody knows. 'Cause-
Yeah, it's a little under 3, I believe.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Carol Balmer, 96 Middleton, wrong address. 5 Douglas Drive, Homedale. I just need some clarifications on a couple of things. Mr. Bear,
Yes.
Hi. Can you tell me out as far as the Rossi is concerned? Was that included in the calculations?
For what our affordable
Rest-
housing obligation would be?
Yes.
Yeah, preserved property, like farmland or open space doesn't count as against the obligation. The amount of developable vacant land is a factor. So to the extent it's constrained either by open space or farmland of that like, those properties would not be counted.
Okay, can you tell me last time that Rossi was updated?
That's not I don't know.
Does the township committee
That
know?
I couldn't tell you.
Because I think it's supposed to be updated every 10 years.
Yeah, and there's been amendments to it more recently than that, I'd say a couple of years ago.
All right, but amendments and updates, are they the same thing?
I mean, an update would be more periodic, an amendment is because something's being added to the Rossi, which happened a couple of years ago.
Okay, so the amended or updated Rossi was included in the calculations for our units, correct?
Well, yeah, the calculation is not it's like rocket science. Truly, both fair share and I'm not really joking that much. Fair share and the towns each retained economists as experts. The municipal expert was from Philadelphia. They issued probably 4 to 6 volumes of reports that are extremely lengthy. And so your town, the properties within your township, our township here, the county, we're part of a 3-county region, Monmouth, Ocean, and Mercer County. So they look statewide, then at your region, and then at your town. So it's sort of like all that's put together. Then you look at how many low and moderate income households were in the region, left the region, how many are projected to come in, and they somehow mix all that up and they come up with a methodology that comes up with a number. But certainly, constrained land is a factor that would reduce the township's obligation.
Okay, along those lines, let me ask you this, because I'm a little confused on how Fair Share and the Council of Affordable Housing and how they ended up being the deciding factors, okay?
New Jersey Supreme Court.
Okay.
So the COA doesn't exist now. After the last administration at state level sort of let COA go defunct, and ultimately there was a decision from the New Jersey Supreme Court in 2015 which said that any town that was before COA, like Homebell, had to go to the court to preserve your immunity from builder's remedy, which is what we did here. And the Supreme Court said Fair Share Housing Center, which is an advocacy group for affordable housing statewide, is a party, meaning like a plaintiff defendant party in every municipal litigation.
So it's like an interested party?
Correct. Well, greater than an interested party.
Intervening party?
They were a party.
Okay.
They were a party in every municipal litigation.
Yeah, so.
Okay, now let me
You
finish
can
that
refer your
thought.
comments to the mayor, Carol.
Yeah.
I'm sorry?
Yeah, just
refer
to
your
the-
comments
to the committee.
and Mr. Barrow will respond if the committee desires.
Okay.
It's not a deposition for Andy.
No, I'm just confused on a few points,
Just if you can
okay?
ask him up here and then we'll answer.
Okay, I'll ask it up here, all right.
Thank you.
Let me ask you this. The regulations, the state regulations, rules, and statutes that were under Council of Affordable Housing, are they still valid under Fair Share?
Some yes, some no. Sorry to interrupt.
Thank you.
I'll keep my mouth.
You guys want to get?
Regarding some yes and some no, in the regulations, and I don't have them in front of me, but I do remember reading them over the weekend, is that you cannot build low and affordable housing on environmentally sensitive lands. Is that correct?
Just
Yes,
Again,
is that correct?
this is for all commenters, to streamline things, at the request of the committee. Please ask all your questions, direct them to the mayor and the
I'm
committee.
sorry.
And then, no problem. And at the end of the comment, the appropriate party will respond.
So let's do it this way, Carol, can you list all your questions, and we'll have Mike and Andy answer one. Can you just list all your questions?
All my questions?
Yes, please.
Okay, all right, I'm interested in the rules and regulations and statutes that were enabled under the Council on Affordable Housing, and the stipulation in those rules and regulations that you cannot build low and affordable housing on environmentally sensitive lands, okay? I'm also interested in the fact of COA, which I believe Palmer Square, that stream there, is part of COA. So how is that being built upon for low and moderate income housing? All right? The other thing I'm interested in is the planning board applications. They still have to go before the planning board, correct? So if they're going before the planning board, and for some reason they cannot meet what the planning board deems as acceptable standards, and they get turned down, what happens?
Okay, any other questions?
So far, unless one of your answers brings up a question.
Okay,
not
so
now.
Mike-
You asked your questions, if you could,
Right, so
thank
Mike-
you for that.
Why don't you answer what you can, Andy,
Yep.
and then we'll have to get back to a problem.
I'll let Andy take his crack at it.
Go ahead, Andy.
Thank you, Carol.
Thank you,
Do you want
Carol.
me to sit down?
Yeah, Andy.
Thank you.
Thank
Merry
you.
Christmas.
All right,
by
the
the way.
answer. So on the environmental question, so the test is whether the property is developable. Certainly, you can't build any housing in wetlands, for instance. But so to the extent land is quote environmentally constrained, if the developers of these properties have to go to DEP and get whatever permits are required under the state environmental laws. So environmental constraint in and of itself doesn't preclude development. They have to build like anyone else would build to not impact or violate those laws and get the appropriate permits. In terms of planning board applications, if you approve the zoning, the developers will have to go before the planning board. If those applications are, and so the developer has to meet like any application, meet the requirements of the zone. These are the zone ordinances. If the applications are denied it would be like anything else. If they're denied for a reason that's not in conformance with law, that could be reversed by the Superior Court, and the township would have issues before the court on its Mount Laurel plan if they were denied, but that's a long way down the road.
Now, what about CAFRA?
That applies.
Okay, any other comments on this? Okay, so now we need to vote.
Motion to adopt.
Motion to adopt. Motion to close and adopt.
Move.
Roll call.
Mr. Montempo?
Yes.
Mr. Vitale?
Recuse myself.
Mr. Nicholas?
Yes.
Dr. Pascucci?
Yes.
Mayor Hines?
Yes.
Next ordinance is ordinance 2019-32, an ordinance amending Chapter 30, Development Regulations of the Code of the Township of Holmdel by repealing Section 30-135 in its entirety and creating a new Section 30-137 entitled Affordable Housing Multiple Family, AH-MF, Zoning District Rezoning Block 52, Lots 17 and 18, to allow for residential market rate and affordable housing units.
Public hearing. Palmer. Ma'am in the back.
That's Middle Road, right?
No.
Palmer. Middle Road, just so you know, Middle Road will not be on the agenda tonight.
Well, we got a
You could-
notice to be here for that Middle Road.
You can speak at the very end regarding anything. So this is Palmer, and I'm going to lead with, go ahead. Sorry, please. Ralph, I was motioning to the gentleman behind you. I'm sorry, I lost his name in the...
Okay.
It's okay, Rob, you speak better than I do
Tall.
anyway.
I don't have eyes in the back of my head.
Robert Generke, Gengerke, for the record. 77 Arlington Court. You've got it. You know how to spell it by now. I mentioned this at the planning board meeting last week, and I know that you gentlemen and lady have all heard this before from me. Here's my concern. As you know, you've got nearly 290 units that are going up in, can I give this to the, would that be okay?
I'm familiar with it, but go ahead.
They're all going up in less than a 1 mile radius of each other. There is no other massive amount of construction like that going on anywhere in Holmdel. And my understanding is that we're supposed to be striving for an inclusive sort of administration of affordable housing. This is all going to the same corner where affordable housing always goes. And it strikes me that this is not really meeting that sort of an obligation. I'm concerned about that. I'm concerned about the fact that, as Ralph mentioned, as other people will undoubtedly mention, we've got high-density units going up that we have never had before. There is no removing them once they are there. So none of the new construction fits with the existing designs, which is also supposedly one of the goals, is that the development meet the style of the community that it's in. We don't have 4- and 5-story or even 3-story residences of this volume, this size going on. And it's always been a part of the requirements in affordable housing that you not violate the entire town rules for that. So I'm concerned about that. The flooding is an issue that we've always raised. Mr. Nicholas had gotten Rutgers involved. They are not done. We're about to make a decision to go forward with something where a study about the water table, the subsidence of the water, how the floodwaters are drained, that hasn't been answered. The research isn't in yet. And it would be a shame to approve this and move forward when you don't even have the results in. what's going to also confound those results is the construction that's on Route 35 in Middletown, right across from, on Palmer Avenue. That's going to change the flood also. Now, if it ameliorates it, that's terrific. I'm thrilled. But in the interest of getting these things built, you're talking about, if it's not approved, you are potentially, Mr. Baer mentioned, it's potentially opening to the risk of a builder's remedy. Potentially. And we are hopefully, as Mr. Hines said, hopefully able to buy down some of the units in a pilot program that we don't even know will be approved by the judge, who has been notably very averse to making any changes. When other builders offered to accept some of the units from Palmer Avenue, she was having none of it. So I'm concerned about the fact that we're basing this on potentially, hopefully, maybe this will happen, and yet the decision tonight makes it irrevocable. It makes it a done deal. You can't unbuild those buildings. The last thing, I'm sorry to go on, I just want to be sure that all of this is mentioned in here. The prior plan, my understanding also is that if affordable housing is deemed, if a site is deemed unacceptable for affordable housing, unsuitable for development, then it can't be added back in later. And yet in January 2016, the Township Committee voted unanimously that the site was not acceptable. In fact, the final line from Mayor Hines at the time was about how, I don't know how this got this far, this site is clearly unsuitable for development. So, since it's been rejected once, it is now back in the mix. I'd be happy to go and do whatever I could to help make this case if we could go back, but to pursue each step along the way was logical. Each step that was made along the way made sense, but we end up with an absurd conclusion. And I don't think it's a good idea to ratify it because we got to the conclusion, all the steps were right. It's still an absurd conclusion. There's nothing wrong with saying, you know what, maybe we shouldn't be voting on this tonight. Maybe this should not be approved tonight. You have to vote it down, you just don't have to vote on it. And if the judge says, well, why not? You say, well, it really was a bad deal. We heard from all of these citizens, we really want to rethink it. I don't think that would fall on deaf ears as much as she has been a proponent of moving forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Robert. Jim.
Let's see if I can make this work. Can you hear me?
I would take the mic, Jim, and just put it.
Be able to reach my name is Jim Mercado, Licato. I live at 57 Ducks Creek Court in Palmer Square. I'm going to reiterate a lot of the words that Robert had stated here, but the bottom line is, this is not about affordable housing for me. This is about trying to protect my family. I was the condo association president for 22. I was the association president for Palmer Square for 22 years. I've been fighting and dealing with the flooding since probably 2005 or so. This is about the safety of my family at this point and my neighbor's safety. Eric, at some point, you had said, you guys really have to invest in new mics here and new speakers. I mean, with all the money that this town spends on other worthless things, you gotta upgrade these things. Eric, at some point on the planning board, when the planning board voted no to the previous builder's project, you said, why would anybody want to build here? So why the hell are we putting this here? Mike, you spearheaded getting the Rutgers team involved. And you said you were concerned about our safety. So the preliminary report stated, the flooding is caused by developments that were built upstream of us over the years without proper stormwater management. And to address the root of this problem, it would require that the stormwater runoff from these upstream sub-basins be reduced. Rutgers also stated that this would not be an easy fix. I spoke with the Rutgers engineer after he gave one of his presentations, and I asked his opinion. Do you think it would be prudent to build on this property? And he said no, he thought it would be better to wait and understand and bring the flooding under control before any further building would be done in this area. So again, why is this being built? Why is this on this list? It's not about affordable housing, it's about my family's safety. It was mentioned at the planning board meeting last week that the builder claims their project will neither add to nor lessen the flooding in the area. What does that mean? Does that mean that they're not going to add to the flooding with the runoff from their property? Because from what I understand from Rutgers, the concern is from the floodwaters coming upstream, not the runoff from their property. Can I show you guys flooding photos again? Because I want to point out a couple items.
Sure.
Pass it around, please. Sure. Thanks. What you're doing is analogous